This government particularly is intellectually challenged. This government is intellectually bankrupt. This president, like I said, with his team, are committed only to coming to power again in 2027. That is why their mindset is take the parties out of the way, destroy PDP if we can, take away Labour Party if we can, be the only sole person standing, make a visual re-entry in 2027 and easy, take. So this president and his team, because he thinks he's not performing well, because 2027 will be on his record. What they accomplished the past 4 years, not what he hopes to accomplish the next 4. If he feels that he hasn't done much, the best thing is not to go for real contest, is to turn these parties into leprous fingers. So all the parties will be singing hallelujah for him, but that's not going to happen. There will be resistance, but not only from the top, from the bottom.
Professor Udenta O is our guest. All right, in November this year, President Donald Trump designated Nigeria as a country of particular concern for religious persecution, and then went ahead to issue unprecedented threats and even directing the Department of State's defense to get ready, if need be, for military action against Nigeria, claiming Christian genocide in Nigeria. So, for you, designating Nigeria a country of particular concern, what does it mean to be a country of particular concern?
Thank you for having me. Like I said, I'm happy you use the term redesignation, which means we were once designated as a country of particular concern in 2020 by the same President Trump in his first term. And that designation is a consequence of practical actions and a product of intense, rigorous study of the variables that Nigeria has met the threshold for the country to be designated a country of particular concern in terms of the Religious Freedom Act. It's a pre-existing act, enacted by Parliament in the US, by the Congress, that on certain thresholds, if a country is assumed not to be honoring or respecting religious freedom or persecuting people on the basis of their faith, the US, as a moral country, must rise to the occasion and impose certain sanctions. That was done in 2020, but then when Biden took office in 2021, he lifted that. Maybe again upon re-examination of certain variables and data too, they say, oh, the country has done something significant between the period of designation to when he was then, lifted that designation. Secondly, don't forget that when Buhari went to visit Trump in the White House, I don't know the particular year, in his first term, he pointedly asked him, Buhari told us, Trump didn't disclose it. Why are you killing Christians in your country? And Buhari said he was stunned and taken aback. He didn't prepare for that. Maybe a conversation about economy, investment, etc., loan, grants, what have you, or Nigerian push for inclusion in the, one of the public members of the Security Council. His mind was churning around those critical strategic areas, and he said, why are you killing Christians in your country? It took him time to recover. And they said, we're not killing Christians. We have issues that are complex. They're header farmer, climate change, porous borders, all manners of things, and so on. And again, Muslims too have been killed with Christians. He was able to answer as much as he could. And maybe Trump saw the sincerity in his voice or whatever there, or maybe wasn't impressed. That's what must have led to the designation in the first instance. Now, Trump in November, like you pointed out, redesignated Nigeria as a CPC country on the basis, again, of some, evaluations of variables on the ground. Some perceived not just the killings, but the systematic killings. The uprooting of people, displacement, depopulation, rise in IDP camps that are not even maintained, and then global outcry. In Australia, there's some noise about that in Parliament. In Canada, some noise about it in Parliament. The US itself, a very important senator, a very powerful senator, Ted Cruz, led the charge with other ones like Raleigh Moore at the level of the House of Representatives. So when you have this confluence of global and national forces working in tandem, Trump is a guy who is very inconvenient as a president and incorrect as a politician. He doesn't take convention that serious. He doesn't take orthodoxy that serious. He simply will act, not on impulse, as people will presume, on his own deeply ingrained mindset, using his weapon as a social media tool as a weapon to say, you are killing Christians, desist, I will designate you this, and I'll come guns are blazing, and so on. In essence, Trump is a master of messaging. That messaging is, he rhetoricizes his viewpoints and narratives in such blatantly threatening form as to shock you into a realization of the oddity of your own condition. He did that with Gaza. I will turn you into a Riveria. I will tear it down, take away the rubble, build golf courses with maybe prancing women on bikini. in the heart of Muslim Middle East. They were shocked. We don't want this extreme measure. It will not solve our problem. It will rather exacerbate our problem. Let us now talk to Hamas and impress upon them the need for ceasefire. The moment there's a ceasefire, I hear not the value anymore. So he's actually pushing the country, the government that is indolent and confused and distracted to say, wake up and smell the coffee. If you do not do so, certain hard decisions will be taken. But if you begin to do so and convince the world they are doing so, Trump can always pull back. He does that. It's very clear. If he's not clear, he would have won the election 2016, contending that he won 2022, which is still very problematic for us to know who really won. And then he won again 2024. So he's a smart player. He's not going to come gun and blazing, start, with the staccato gunshots everywhere, missile fly here and there. He's not that crazy in the head. And the US doesn't operate that way, in spite of all the power, enormous power they're putting under their grasp. But what he's doing is he's signaling. If you don't take certain precipitate steps, mid-term, short-term, long-term, to stem this so-called horrifying scale of killings, especially in north-central Nigeria, that many ascribe to be Christian genocide, a lot more problem will come to the country. In conclusion on this segment of your question, I ask Nigerians to take a step back and take a deep breath. The betting of this country was inorganic and contingent. We didn't create ourselves 1914. The British did, bringing over 300 separate, distinct political, economic, social, cultural, even faith groups together not a harmonious relationship, in a convenient relationship. Till today, we're still struggling to create a nation out of this welter of communities. In essence, our nationhood is imperiled by the factor of our inconvenient betting. The fault lines are deep, ready to explode. People should not romanticize the Trumpian threat as if it's going to be helpful to solving our national problem. It will not, because it will deepen the divide and let even those who should not profit out of it, profit out of it. In 2023, somebody ran an election on the Muslim ticket. I don't want that victim mentality. That is a Christian horde, global Christian conspiracy against Islam. And somebody here who is already a failed presidency, as far as I'm concerned, and a failed party called APC is going to say, we told you so. If we yield ground on this matter on Sharia and so on in the north, these Christians are going to wipe everybody out. As much as we understand the killings in the country, in the middle part of the country and so on, we can see that Muslims now are under immense pressure. Their survival is even under threat. I'm putting this out so that people out there, pastors, preachers, Christian evangelists, passionate people from these communities will understand that it takes more than a raw emotion to solve this kind of complex problem. While there may be issues of Christian genocide and so on, we must take a deep breath and find a way to reach common ground, mobilize the national spirit, convince the government to wake up. It is by being distracted by politics. I said it in the last time we talked about. This president is fighting on 2027. He doesn't want to have a proper election. He wants to have leprous parties like Abacha had. PDP, ADC, Labour Party, SDP as leprous parties with no candidates, adopting him alone. In doing that, he's taking his eyes off the gas pedal of fight against terrorism, against insecurity, against banditry. In doing this obsession, being obsessed with politics of power and his own succession in 2027, he's not talking in terms of how do we reduce poverty, how do we reduce exclusion, how do we re-engage our communities, how do we have the IDPs. So when you are not committed to this, you don't even have ambassadors for 2 years. You don't have a presidential commission on foreign relations or foreign policy, because the focus is narrow on winning election, destroying PDP, destroying Labour Party and so on. You have lost the plot and dropped the ball. That is the focus of Nigerians today. The president should abandon this high road to political perfidy in terms of having himself as the only standing candidate in 2027 and focus on the threats, including the killings in the Middle Belt. That could be Christian genocide, that could be more complex than it, including the threat coming from Trump, and having ambassadors in place, having them voice all over the world, working with critical stakeholders in sorting out this mess. And finally, in mobilizing Nigerians across faith. We have what is called NIREC, N-I-R-E-C, Nigerian or National Interreligious Council. Is it still alive and well? We have this concourse of Khan and the Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs. By now, we should have seen them marching lockstep with the president in the field and his team. By now, we should have former ambassadors who are very great, former foreign affairs ministers, people like Emeka Anyoko, people like Bolija Kiyimi, people like Kingibe. Should be around the president now, marshalling this thing. They see them abroad and say, we know them, and we trust and respect them. We are not seeing such. It is just self-defense. The country is not killing Christians. The country is not in this bad shape. We're going to work hard to end terrorism. Verbalizing your intent does not solve your problem. You need to get off your butt, roll your sleeves, and as a president with a team, begin now to mobilize the energy of the country to confront this present reality.
What do you make of the president's response so far on this particular issue?
At the level of rhetoric, he's been very well restrained, knowing the character called Donald Trump. He can't match him. Verbal staccato for verbal staccato. He cannot match him violent language for violent language. So the president has been measured. He's taking wise counsel. He's talked about Nigeria willing to partner even with the US, seek their support, seek their understanding. As a president, of course, he needs to talk about no to Christian genocide. We have the complex security situation in the north. We have the radical Islamic hordes from the east and the northeast and the northwest thundering down in our communities. We have the issue of banditry, header, farmer clash. Nuancing it in such a way that it does not exclude any of the major communities of faith in the country in the conversation. So at the level of rhetoric, I, who is always harshly critical of the president, will not say he has done too badly. But rhetoric and narrative do not solve a problem. You need to get off the narrative of rhetoricizing this crisis to the domain of practical action. Short term, what do you do? Long term, middle term, what do you do? Long term, what do you do? Short term for me will be put ambassadors in place. I've been screaming about this for almost a year and a half. If you don't have ambassadors, nobody will take you serious. Our foreign policy in the 1960s was constructed around that high moral imperative of African decolonization. How do we, by founding AU, or AU as it then was in 1963, begin the march to decolonize the rest of Africa, accelerating it all through the early 70s, under the watch, remember, of Murtala Mohammed and Obasanjo, when it became a Afro-centered foreign policy, radical in nature, intent in destroying apartheid. Nigeria became a frontline state, nationalizing British companies and so on. So it was coherent, clear. In the 80s was the concert of medium powers that Bola Ahmed helped Bankrupt to put together, that saw us with ECOMOG in Sierra Leone, in Liberia, etc. But from the Obasanjo, of course, did well with Bouteflika, with the former South African president, like the Thabo Mbeki, in constructing AU out of the way, out of this shambolic order then called OAU, that would become a conference of heads of state with their cigars and their power. AU as a mobile tool, with what? Peer review mechanism, with NEPAD, and then African Architecture on Peace and Security. It's safe and coherence. NEPAD, remember, needs documents, etc. Under Buhari, this coherence dissolved into tributaries that are inchoate in nature. Under Bola Ahmed Tinubu, our foreign policy has crumbled completely. ECOWAS, for the first time in our history, even with coup d'etats across Africa, civil wars, etc., imploded. The ancestors who constructed it kept it together. Under his watch, 3 states walked out of it, maybe for good. Under his watch, ambassadors have not been in place for almost 2 years. Or more than
what
2
do you
years.
think is even responsible for not appointing ambassadors in the last 2 to 3 years?
I don't know. I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense because you have national priorities in the sense of the key sectors of national life, the space of existence, the economy. What are my tools to resuscitate the economy? The tools are not working, I understand, but there are tools he has. Remove subsidy, flood in naira, and tax regime, essentially. Tax reform and new tax regime. They're not working, all right, but there's something they can say. Under the social safety net program, of course, country from what Buhari stopped. Money grant here, terror money, farmer money, youth money, etc., student loan. But when it comes to foreign policy, there are the 4 so-called Ds: development, democracy, diaspora, etc. But it's just at the level of talk. The first level is to have ambassadors in place. And there are many countries that cannot even allow ambassadors to be in place for even a day. If you go to UK as the preeminent global power, and there are issues to confront the Nigerian state with the UK government, and the Prime Minister is looking for the ambassador and there's none in place, he will not go and sit down with the council, minister-councilor, or charge their fee, not to talk of the US, or Russia, or China, or Germany. Those ones may be more friendly in terms of the way they look at you. But in terms of seriousness, they say, no, these guys are not serious yet. Where will they pass the message to a country, to a president? It is with ambassadors. Here in America, they have tools on ground. The embassy is staffed by all manners of people, including security and intelligence officials. 2, the critical civil society elements who are part of the American domain of power and influence. 3, there were informants there, people there who have been gathering information everywhere. 4, they have things they are funding in various areas, even malaria and so on there, cholera, eradication. You don't know the people driving it in the villages. They give them information data. They have drones, they have satellites, and each time they make sure they have an ambassador in place. We don't have any of that. And this president is confused and bemused because he's distracted by power. If the PDP implodes and crumbles, if the convention doesn't hold, if they don't have the candidate, oh my God, I've succeeded in my mission in becoming a second-term president. Same with Labour Party, same with SDP or ADC, rather than focus on the great issues of the day. So when Trump came calling, it was like a soccer punch. It's a wake-up call. Smell the coffee. If you don't, this country is going to go down. I'm among those who believe that Trump don't go for a stream for the sake of a stream. Trump signals to you as a signal to his base. This is what I intend to do. But if you do the right thing, I don't need to get there. I'll give you an example with Gaza. Another one that is emerging is with Ukraine and Russia. It's more difficult and complex because Russia is not a small meat to eat. 6,000 plus nuclear power, nuclear warheads, the biggest in the world. So you have to be careful how you manage them. If not, you have sorted that even mess out. The way it's trying to sort out the DRC and the Rwandan crisis, the way they sorted out the Sudan and South Sudan situation, Nigerian crisis of the moment is a ravaging scourge of extremist Islamic, franchises from the northeast and the northwest, bearing down on the rest of the country. The crisis that has exploded in the Middle Belt region as possibly a crisis of displacement, depopulation, and devastation. A crisis that people now perceive to be genocidal in nature. It's the duty of the Nigerian government to push back on these narratives by doing practical things which I've listed at first level. Second level is to remobilize the energy of the armed forces. How do you do that? You can even have a conference, security conference, declare clear and present emergency in the security sector. Get even former security heads who have deep knowledge of the system, embed them with their current leadership of the armed forces and security agencies. Then begin now to work with the subnational leadership, the governors, the government chairman. In 2001 or 2, President Obasanjo faced some similar crisis in the Benue Valley or Benue Trial states, Benue, Taraba, Nasarawa, Plateau, etc. You know what he did? He set up a overarching, team made up of the presidency, the Secretary of the Government Office, and Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution, where I was the director of internal conflict, and moved everybody, including himself, for 4 days to Kuru, in Jos, at NIPS. There he worked with us, with his lips rolled, poring over maps, studying data, going to the field, getting scholars to speak. Are you seeing that with this president and his team? Absolutely. We used to go to Villa in those days every month for conflict analysis, with the president sitting at the table with the Institute for Peace and other critical stakeholders there, taking questions, pushing back on him, pushing back on us. We having the freedom to speak our mind. In 2003, we set up what was then called Presidential Implementation Council, headed by the Vice President, with ministers in place in tow. Do you see that sense of urgency in this government? Do you see that sense of strategic mobilization and profound depth when it comes to tackling national emergencies? This is a national emergency. But as a patriot, it is not my desire to say, come, gun a-blazing, invade the country, this spoil, desecrate or territorial integrity. No Nigerian patriot will wish that, because the consequences will be very immense when the battle has come and gone and the guns are no longer blazing. We still live with Christians and Muslims and many other groups in between.
Look at some persons argue that in 2014, that the APC, including some of those in power today, went to America and said that Goodluck was not protecting the Christian community and that Christians were being killed and they wanted help from America. And today, the same America is coming back to say you are not protecting the Christians, and they are fighting back. How do you reconcile this?
Somebody said that history has a way of coming to bite back on you, and then a day of reckoning is always around. I think today the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper is on our INEC chairman, Amupitan, and the legal brief he did in 2020 about Christian genocide in Nigeria, an 80-page piece he contributed to a big document, maybe run into hundreds and hundreds of pages, and proclaimed clearly from the point of view of jurisprudence and careful legal reading that may be issues of human rights abuses, crimes against humanity, and genocidal war declared on Christian populations in the North Central, as the new chairman of INEC, it becomes a raging crisis now, maybe of confidence and trust. So it's part of that thing you're talking about. In 2014, they did that. 2020, the INEC chairman then, as a lecturer, as a professor at the University of Jos, put out his viewpoint. He's like a brief, he's like an opinion. My take is that even with the existence of Christian genocide, people should not talk and act overboard, as if the country has suddenly dissolved itself into inchoate, regions of Christian faith and non-Christian faith, Muslim faith and non-Muslim faith. By the time we discover that this crisis can be managed, damage will have been deep and profound in terms of distrust, mistrust, aided by disinformation, misinformation, and fake news. So we have to be careful that even what we're doing does not weaponize interfaith fault lines in the country. Many people believe that this government is not doing particularly well, but some people believe too that this advanced moment, this moment of reckoning, should not provide opportunity to the government to cash in and say we are defending one faith or the other. It's critical that pastors, evangelists, preachers, contributors, critical stakeholders, public intellectuals understand this, that there's always a side, another side to a coin. There's always a narrative and counter-narrative. If you talk about the Sharia system, remember what Obasanjo said in 2004, 5 or 2, or whatever time he said it in his time as a president. The Sharia has been part of our penal code from time immemorial. The real Sharia will endure, but the fake political Sharia will die off. Unfortunately, it didn't die off. It became cemented or baked into the jurisprudence of the law in the north. That is why you have people who purchase crates and crates of beer and sell it even in Christian communities in the north have been attacked. Where you find issues of this blasphemy that doesn't concern Muslim, maybe Muslim-Christian relationship, you're punished for that. So if we can get a conversation where the Sharia becomes limited, one, to civil issues, and secondly, to the Muslim faith and adherents of that faith, and then leave the rest of the people out of it, there will be less noise internationally about it. Is when somebody who is not a Muslim is subject to Islamic injunction, Islamic law, and meant to be punished for that, or even die because you're expressing some inconvenient opinion about the faith, which you don't belong to. These are things which you don't handle anyhow. You handle with care because they're complex. Matters of faith are not matters of bread and butter. You say, give me this cloth, I like it. If you don't give it to me, I'll take it by force. Matters of faith are deep and profound because it is in the heart. And it is anchored on the transcendental divinity beyond this earth to somewhere else. Some believe if you die, you're not dying here, you're going to go to heaven or go to Nirvana somewhere. So the rational life and practical, logical life that people express in their day-to-day conduct dissolves into nothingness when it comes to faith. So managing faith is not that easy. So less noise, less intemperate argument, less staccato, sentiment all over the place, Trump come gun blazing, destroy everybody, destroying Christians. That will not work because it's oversimplified.
All right, let's look at it from this context. Supposing Trump comes with sanctions or other measures, what are the consequences for Nigeria? And could he also be setting a bad precedent for us?
It depends on specifically the kind of tools he wants to utilize.
Whether he uses sanctions?
I said the most practical tools will be sanctions, and sanctions can come in various forms. They come in the form of aids that could be stopped, grants already in motion can be stopped, loans being prepared and packaged that could be stopped. Maybe if you pay some money to purchase some aircrafts or some other ordnance or military equipment, they could freeze it or cancel that, making it difficult for you to even sustain the war against terror and banditry. It could be in the range of sanctions on individuals and authorities and state functionaries. We are hearing some noise about the Sharia law in the north, 12 governors under watch and so on there. It could be asset freeze, it could be visa ban and all manners of things there. But for me, the issue of guns blazing is an extremist measure, which I rule out now, unless it gets to a stage in which this matter can be controlled or ameliorated. However the case may be, no country likes to be under sanctions regime. It doesn't work well, not just for the government of the day, but for the citizenry as a whole. Russia is a clear example of an over-sanctioned state that is still standing tall, fighting a war in Ukraine. Iran has suffered decades and decades of sanctions. It hasn't crumbled. So North Korea is the same. So sanctions are important, but they are necessary but not sufficient tools, to solve the problem. They call attention to a crisis and they remind you that you have the tools to engage you in a profoundly negative way that you may not like. But if you now take the steps which I've tried to articulate, and others I'm sure have articulated, maybe better than me, in terms of get ambassadors of the place now, get the Presidential Council on Foreign Relations or Foreign Policy, mobilize your security apparatuses, engage the citizens across the different domains and different fault lines we have in the country. So we can begin to have Muslim, Christian understanding with civil society, and then political parties. Look at 1999, Obasanjo set up the party office. We have a clearinghouse for political parties. So this contestation will manage easily. He have even the faith chairman of APP, as then the party was called, Mahmoud Waziri, as a special advisor with a cabinet level rank on inter-party affairs. Now you don't have that existing anymore. Rather, it is using presidents in all the parties, the PDP, the ADC, etc., to dismantle these parties. When you dismantle the parties and deny the elite opportunity to contest for power, what do? They riot in the way that suits them. They aid the enemies of the state. They begin to draw, stoke certain things they will not see them stoke. So rather than mobilizing all the parties and getting them, off their back and allowing them to be what they be, you are now suppressing and repressing them, weaponizing INEC, weaponizing the judiciary, having captured the National Assembly and so on. If you people do not have a space to breathe, they begin to seek for self-help. Self mustn't be catastrophic self-help in terms of toppling the democratic system. It could be, in a way, engineering constructed an inorganic conflict. Conflicts come of two types. Organic conflict you and I will deal with every day, over resources, over land, contestation over politics and power and economic opportunities. Then there's an inorganic one. Common parents about what are you guys waiting for now? We're not happy waiting to happen. You haven't even demonstrated yesterday. There's some fun for you to do so, here and there and so on. You precipitate national crisis for yourself because you're excluding everybody from the centerpiece of political conversation and power. That is one thing I've been talking about and people don't seem to listen. If you take a party, for example, like the PDP, why is the government obsessed about the party? Because it's been in power before. It has apparatuses everywhere. It has infrastructure in all the 774 LG, in every home, in every village. So if the party like PDP will have to have a P2B as a candidate, not a small Labour party, or Jonathan as a candidate, it's a nightmare scenario for the president. So the idea is this party will not recover. Let us batter it down. ADC with a lot of powerful names too has 16 legal challenges, all engineered from outside. So with Labour Party that has been handed power by the former INEC chairman to Nena Usman, now taken away to Abure, or to create further confusion. For me, these are not coincidences, but grand design by the government of the day to march into 2027 for a visually re-entry process. In doing so, you took your eyes off the ball of the fight against terrorism, the fight against banditry, the ball of having ambassadors in place, the ball of engaging the international community, because you focus more narrowly in self-preservative politics.
Let's extrapolate now and link up this with politics, talking about the Trump threats. What does it mean to the APC's Muslim ticket?
The APC Muslim ticket in 2023, when it bettered itself, the clear message from the president, then the candidate Bola Ahmed Tinubu, was it's a strategic gamble designed to mop up as much vote from across the north and even beyond as much as possible. That means we have no intention of weaponizing religion or elevating one faith over the other. Or look at the geography of power. That is the argument, not mine. You have a minority Muslim in the south. That's Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who is a Muslim of the north-southwest extraction. We don't really know the percentage of Christian and Muslims there. Experts can tell us that. But the entire southeast and the entire south side are predominantly Christian. That means it's a gross minority in the south. For them to have a minority in the north with a minority in the south would be a gross disadvantage. So they have to have a minority in the south and a majoritarian candidate of a majoritarian faith in the north, where the Muslims are more in the north than Christians. That's why they claim they went for that ticket. Not because there is any attempt for Islamic supremacy or for Islamic militancy to take hold in the country and grow in leaps and bounds.
But the perception.
Now, that's the argument. But that's not the way people perceive it. That's not the narrative out there. The narrative out there is that this is just a weapon to clobber the rest of the country down and to shove it down the throat of non-Muslims that we are in charge. And the president catastrophically adopted that mindset. Now with the pressure coming from outside, and no less a person than Donald Trump, the American president, the dilemma is very clear for the APC to grapple with. Do we sustain this Muslim ticket with the heated noise about Christian genocide in the north? Or do we then now placate that community by bringing a Christian running mate. Only the APC can answer that question, not me.
Are you worried or bothered that sectarian crisis, whatever name of any kind in the country, has lingered this long without seeming solution in sight?
I'm bothered because in a sense, some sort of a conflict expert. Not because I trained originally in the area of peace practice or conflict studies, but because I led a presidential team for 8 years in managing internal conflict in Nigeria. Therefore, I worked with critical stakeholders, both state and non-state actors, including international development partners and embassies, diplomatic missions, and multilateral organizations. The World Bank, the EU, the USAID, when it was very much in force, the British defeat, and so on, a concert of civil society groupings. In this institute that we created in 2002 or 3, what we call the Strategic Conflict Assessment Document, from where, as I told you, extrapolated the Presidential Implementation Committee headed by Tiku then, at the highest level of government. So I thought that given the kind of work we did, the conflict analysis, the conflict research, the early warning, scheme, both at the local levels and at the national level as a hub. Because the idea is to have the continental mechanism feed into the regional community like ECOWAS and into the nation state, early warning and early response mechanism. We had all that in mind 2001, 2002. That's 24 years ago. So if that pace has been sustained across this immense historical time, almost quarter of a century, possibly the answer to your question would be no, we will not be suffering this kind of mess we are suffering today. But because sometimes these governments are distracted, they pursue different things that suit their self-interest, not the collective interest of the people. Sometimes they don't have any holistic approach to conflict management. Sometimes the method they deploy will not be suitable to our own environment. I'll give you an example. Traditional methods of managing conflict have not been really elevated the way it should be. Secondly, it took a long battle to even mainstream the multi-door court system. Remember the multi-door court system, where you have the door of litigation, the door of mediation, the door of conciliation, the door of negotiation, the door of arbitration. It took a long time. Lawyers were feeling under threat. If we do all this multi-door, our job will be parade. Now the lawyers are the ones driving it. That means if you try litigation, it doesn't work. Try arbitration, try negotiation, try conciliation. This is, for me, the breadth of this conversation. There's another thing we call transitional justice mechanism. Is it working in enough? When they have a deconfliction, from deconfliction to de-radicalization, de-radicalization to reintegration, is it working? You have other issues called restorative justice. How do we sit down with the victim and offender in the healing process, where you can now reconcile your differences, heal the community, restore peace? You see how the breadth and contours of these tools are, especially non-kinetic tools, because no matter how powerful the kinetic arsenal you may have, you can only suppress an environment for a short period of time. It will rear up its ugly head. The conflict situation there. But if you have the non-kinetic tools, how do you mobilize citizens? How do you gather intel? How do you weaponize intelligence? How do you do early warning evaluation? How do you do early response? How do you look at transitional justice mechanisms? How do you look at traditional methods of conflict management? These are the more, and how do you do multi-track, and multi-tiered conflict management? The one from the state, the one from non-state actors, international community, all in a mix. This government particularly is intellectually challenged. This government is intellectually bankrupt. This president, like I said, with his team, are committed only to coming to power again in 2027. That is why their mindset is take the parties out of the way, destroy PDP if we can, take away Labour Party if we can, be the only sole person standing, make a leisure re-entry in 2027, and easy, take. But again, in doing so, whether you fail or not is not even important. What are the consequences for this kind of precipitate action to the health of the country? The Donald Trump challenge and the guns are blazing seem to be a reminder that the more we distract ourselves from the urgent matters of the day, the more the rest of the world will recommit our attention to those matters.
Okay, let's go to party politics now, and the court's interference in party politics. Take, for instance, the PDP. There are conflicting court judgments from Court of Concurrent Jurisdiction, the Abuja, Ibadan. The convention should not hold, the convention should hold. What's your take in all of this?
Well, this is, I wouldn't say, basically the fragmentation or the crumbling or the decay of the political order. Because the decay of politics is only decay of the judiciary and the decay of our representative democracy. It'll be one of the symptoms there. Sometimes this process reaches a high water mark, given the nature and character of a regime. The Milokun philosophy seems to suit this tendency of state capture. Capture the National Assembly, capture the INEC, capture Judiciary, capture security agencies. I've said it. This is now a hybrid regime that Bola Ahmed Tinubu is running, that the regime that is almost what we call competitive authoritarianism, whether it is liberal or illiberal, whether it is democratic or not democratic, difficult for you to understand anymore. But the overarching aim is to dismantle what we call the guardrails of democracy. Those guardrails that protect democratic governance. One, civic spaces are shrinking. Look at they bring back the Gears environment where you used to protest against Jonathan. That is the Unity Fountain. It's on the gate. Gated by the DSS. You can't even go there to protest. Look at the Freedom, the kind of protest where the court said we restrict you to certain areas there. They took over the entire city from Kubwa axis to Airport Road axis there to Kano axis and so on. People were shut off. So this government is weaponizing the cyber laws and so on, misapplying it. Okay, labor leaders have even been accused of terror financing. Parties are imploding before our eyes, all because of the standard pressure put on them. That's what you find. So judiciary is not spared this. But the happy news is this. Factions are normal occurrences and normal developments in a political party. I was a National Secretary for Alliance for Democracy in 1998 to 2000, end of 2000, early 2021 or 2001. We had factions, multiple factions, but we kept producing candidates. Why is it so? INEC is a regulator. If you go to INEC now, the head office and say, who is the national chairman of PDP? They will not look at you this way. They say, it is Ambassador Damagu. He's the chairman of the party. He succeeded IU, accepted by everybody, until the legitimate processes that brought him in have been exhausted. He's the chairman. So where he goes is where the party goes. Other important members like me and the national secretary is key, but not as key as the chairman of the party. So what is settled is that Damagu is the leader of the party. Two, INEC intervened in the party crisis, brought the chairman, brought the secretary, brought everybody, attended all their meetings, got all the letters to the convention. So the convention is like a pregnancy now already delivered. What the courts are doing is way in here and there. So what you do is ensure your convention goes successfully. Get robust legal representation. Either you do what they stop the execution of the conclusions or decisions of the first court, get another court to give you that lease of life, get another court if you can, get another one too, do your convention. At the end of the day, the correct legal position will triumph. Apuga, until a few months ago, was in factions for about 14, 15 years. Have you forgotten? When Soludo emerged the first time as the governor of Anambra, he was a factional candidate of Apuga. When Obiano emerged, he was a factional, same with the senators, Ume and the rest of them. So factions are there as tendencies within a party. So it's like having a club. You have either bottles of Fanta or spirit, and you gather there and say you remove the chairman of the party, known to INEC. You gather in another location, say you remove the BOT, headed by Senator Mwabara, known to INEC. And then because you have the resources to advertise it to the media, and I'm being engaged about this absurdity before you here, it doesn't change anything. The chairman of the party is Damagu. Chairman of BOT is Mwabara. Chairman of the governor of Bala Mohammed, about his state, Senator Bala Mohammed. And the leadership of the National Assembly caucus is Senator Abamuro. It is known in law. So anything else you do is like you have a freedom of choice, most as a president, an agent planted from outside to destroy the party. The same thing you find in ADC, you find in Labour Party and SDP. It's a trend, not a coincidence. See, the PDP are smart. They should ignore this fashionable noise making, focus on the real issues of the day, do a very fine convention, get a newsletter of leaders, and somewhere down the line, execute and discharge this matter in court with robust intervention from the media, from civil society, from protest groups, warning about the dangers to our democracy and our survival as a nation. If you destroy multi-party governance system, if you deny the party's ability to have people there who are going to represent them as candidates, you actually imperiling our democracy. Abacha did it in 1998 with the leprous finger, remember? The five leprous parties. You didn't register a PPP, you didn't register PDM, ANC and all that. You showed them away because he didn't perform well, because if the contest against you will lose. So this president and his team, because he thinks he's not performing well, because 2027 will be on his record. What they accomplished the past 4 years, not what he hopes to accomplish in the next 4. He even feels that he hasn't done much. The best thing is not to go for real contest, is to turn these parties into leprous fingers. So all the parties will be singing hallelujah for him. But that's not going to happen. There will be resistance, both not only from the top, from the bottom, where the people of this country will gather together, adopt a party or two of their choice, have a candidate that represents their viewpoint and the perspective, that carries their narrative torch in their heart, in his heart, delivers a very powerful struggle in 2027.
There is this perception that the judges have become tools of oppression. And some persons also share the sentiment that justice is right now in life support. With the perception of the judiciary in this light, what is the hope of Nigerians as we approach 2027?
It's a very dangerous portent that August not well for anybody in singularity as persons or in our collectivity as a nation. My take is that There are 2 or 3 things that ought to happen. 1, the moral boundaries or contours of the judiciary must be determined and demarcated quickly. And they can't do it on themselves alone. Therefore, you need civil agency and media agency to do so. It is not enough to make powerful statements or proclamations about the decay of the judicial order or the judicial system, about justice being for sale or judges being for sale. It is for investigative journalism to lead the way and light the torch. We are not just making this noise for the sake of demarketing the judiciary. We are making this noise because we have enormous evidence at our fingertips. We have data to prove our point. And then you can begin now to source for this data. It may take time, weeks and months. The moment you come with 1 or 2 powerful stories about the judges, the kind of money they collect, the properties they have, the investment they have, traced to their families and friends and so on. The moment you do that, they do that abroad. It takes money from the media organization to invest in their reporters and researchers and investigative journalists. The moment they come up with it, we told you so. That's why it is for sale. Philosophically speaking, justice is always for sale in any system. Why is it so? The blind lady of justice is not actually blind. She sees everybody, knows who is the rich, who is the poor. That's why I find that it takes 10, 15 years to try a former governor. It takes only a week to try a guy who stole a goat or stole a yam from massacre and jail him. You put in people behind bar at a waiting trial for about 10 years without trying them. They're dying there in bits. But you get a guy who has stolen 1 billion, 30 billion, 200 billion, spending only 2 days in EFCC in comfort, and goes back to his place in Kano, does a double, gets a chieftaincy title, comes to court if he likes, or the sanks are there all over him like bees after honey. So the judge system sees all this. The justices know the rich and the poor. They know those who are within the mainstream society, those on the margin or periphery. And they simply construct the justice to suit the rich and the powerful and the oppressive classes, and then the justice to malign the dispossessed, the neglected, the injured, and the abused.
But should it be this way?
It shouldn't be that way. That's what I'm about. Resistance at the lower level, agency of the media, mass protest within the ambit of the law, with the constitutional guarantees in place. Begin to now scream aloud. If you don't scream aloud, sustain the screaming. The problem with the country is that people scream aloud and then pull back. And they're distracted. Short-term memory, collective amnesia, marching to another zone. Even this Trumpian thing, 2 or 3 weeks now behind us. But if you stay the course in engaging it and re-engaging it and calling out the justices by name, by profession, by decisions over a long period of time, there'll be remarkable change.
But the media is also on life support, struggling, gasping for breath.
The media shouldn't be on life support because
we are product of the society.
If you lose that section of society, because the judicial apparatus is part of government, and there are 3 arms of government: the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. You guys have arrogated to yourself the 4th branch. That is actually the 4th estate of the realm. That means you have even taken the mandate of civil society. But this one, the state, so that is the 5th estate. The 4th estate means the independent estate. It can capture the judiciary, it is part of government. It can capture National Assembly or the Parliament is part of government. To capture the media is the end of society, end of democracy, and we know it. It is not me that will tell the media to resist the pestilence in your midst and in your ranks. It is recognizing the limit situations we all confront, the poverty of our nation, the hunger in the land, the temptation that are bound, but at the same time knowing that the mission of the media is far, far beyond that of the judiciary, the executive branch, the legislative branch. The watchdog of society. At the barometer we measure, social inclusion, exclusion, national transformation, social instability and crisis. The media is tailor-made over time in the common struggle for democracy, the common struggle for liberation during the colonial time, and for the restoration of democracy against military despotism. The media will be called upon now to resist whatever elemental forces impeding on their capacity to engage.
But the tragedy of the media is the fact that most media owners are also members of some of these political parties.
Yeah, but I've been part of the media conversation space. We push back on this. I go to Arise, even channels, even AIT. These are very important media organizations. There's nothing we will not say on Arise television for or against this government. Even channels, people say maybe softer. There's nothing we will not say. There's nothing I've not said there. I've called out the president by name and by record. And all the important people there who are my host there, they've not pushed back on me because I'm not just making noise or just like insulting people. You have to use the element of intellect and experience and wisdom and patriotism to couch your language. AIT, owned by Govt, is still there as independent media. Sahara reporters, they came with many of them premium times. Whatever you can say about some of these entities there. You put out the piece that they carry it. You attack the regime, they carry it. What more do you expect the media to do? So let people exploit even the spaces that are existing now to deepen this conversation, including Symfoni TV. Am I not here with you? We were here last time. Is there nothing I've not said here that you reflected in your coverage and packaged in your report and so on? That is what the media, and again with social media too, which the state is fighting very hard through the misapplication and misalignment of the cyber laws. It's still very vibrant and robust, that people don't have voices at the mainstream media level, are exploiting the deterritorialized media space. Because media is not comprehensively deterritorialized. There's no single territory of the media. There are multiple territories everywhere. You use those multiple territories and layered territories, either podcasts, blogspot, etc., your opinion editorial and everything and so forth there, to engineer conversation and sustain that conversation for the good of the society and the progress of our democracy.
The PDP, in the light of what has happened and the way they are going, do they still have time to redefine themselves before 2027?
It is their responsibility. I'm not a member of the party. I know a lot of people in the party. Why is it their responsibility? Is to take cue from history and take cue from political evolution of states, not just Nigeria. One, to accept that once you're out of power, it is no longer business as usual. You're no longer comfortable. People will desert your ranks because they're cowardly, they're godless, and they're miserable spirited. The governors who are going, I've given examples about, including my governor of Enugu, they have no anchorage in terms of past. They have no lineage of power. They have no what I call ancestry of power and his understanding or genealogy of power. They can't come back and say 15, 20 years ago, he was a big player in the domain of social struggle or political struggle, or democratic struggle, resistance. They're corporate players. They don't understand what this means. So they work to find themselves in another formation that takes them mainstream to the center in an absurd manner. The party must recognize that. So the party has to reinvent itself as a pro-people's party, as originally claimed in 1998, power to the people. Secondly, the factions are inevitable sometimes in the life of a party. The key thing is that are you legal and legitimate in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of the regulator? And now the PDP faction headed by Adamagu is legitimate in the eyes of the law. It's not because I'm the one saying it, it is what the law prescribed. Being the former party leader myself. Once you have that, plan your convention, defy the odds there, deliver on a solid post-convention leadership, and begin the arduous task of rebuilding the party ranks. If you do that between the end of the year, you have the entirety of 2026 to really work towards the convention of the party for the primary election for the presidency. When the election is coming November next year or February, March 2027, the party will have sufficient time, not alone, but in concert with other opposition groups, to come together and then have a powerful resistance to this impunity called APC.
Thank you very much, Prof.
It's a pleasure.
For obliging your time. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nice to be with you again.